Welcome to the Five of Us. We are five outspoken women with close to 150 years of experience as broadcast journalists. We left our jobs on the very same day, and we are dedicated to helping women avoid the many pitfalls common to the workplace. We've heard from hundreds of people recounting tales of woe on the job, and we have done the research. We're putting it all in a book, and we are here to help. I'm Roma Torrey, and along with Kristen Shaughnessy, Janine Ramirez, Vivian Lee, and Amanda Farinacci, we are the Five of Us.
Hi, everyone. We're back. When my mother started working as a columnist at the Herald Tribune, it was 67 years ago, and she was afraid, very afraid, to get pregnant because 2 years earlier, another woman, a reporter who worked there, was fired for being pregnant. At the time, the bosses insisted it was impossible to be a career woman and a mother at the same time. It's ridiculous. Anyway, several years later, my mother had my brother first and then me, and she was able to keep her job, but there was no such thing as maternity leave. And the day she left the hospital after we were both born, she went right back to work. Now, I'm telling this story because it seems like we have come a long way since those unfriendly days to working women, but compared to other nations, we are woefully behind the times in this country. The U.S. is the least family-friendly among the world's richest countries. That's not just me saying it. That is, coming from all of the experts. In fact, there is nothing on the books guaranteeing paid maternity leave for new mothers. So we're talking about pregnancy on the job today, and how incredible is it, despite all the evidence that paid leave for new parents goes a long way to enhancing worker productivity. We are the only country among all of the developed nations with no paid leave for new parents, none at all. Federal law offers 6 weeks of unpaid leave. 9 states, including New York plus DC, have some form of paid family leave on their books, and some employers offer similar benefits, but it's just a complete hodgepodge, and most American workers have nothing when they have to take off to have children. So, Kristen, the U.S. ranks worst as well when it comes to maternity or maternal care and mortality rates, which seems like such a contradiction when you see how wealthy this country is. What is going on?
Well, compared to other wealthy nations, the United States actually spends the highest percentage of its GDP on healthcare, but then just fails miserably when it comes to working women. And I think we've all had this, and whether it's stress that you put on yourself when you're pregnant, like your mom, like she felt like she had to go right back to work or she'd lose her job. I took 6 weeks with my first daughter, Jamie, and second, with Kara, I took only 4 weeks. She was born on October 17th. I was back before Thanksgiving.
Jeez.
And a lot of that I was working solo. My husband was traveling, playing the mini tour. So imagine single moms have to deal with this day in and day out. I was just single mom for a little while, right? But they have to really deal with it. So there's some data that was gathered just 2 years ago or 3 years ago from about a dozen developed countries. And we're talking Britain, France, Australia, New Zealand. And the United States has the highest maternal mortality rate, which surprised me.
With all the doctors and our health
well, we'll get to that in a moment. The number of maternal deaths has actually risen since 2000. You would think it would go down. And the World Health Organization, just so you know what we're talking about, is that maternal mortality is defined as the death of a woman while pregnant or 42 days after the birth or the termination of a pregnancy. Wow. So 2/3, there are about 700 pregnancy-related deaths each year in the United States. About 2/3 of those are considered preventable. So they're coming from high blood pressure or just different complications, cardiovascular, hemorrhage, all that. Then we get to providers, right? So midwives are revered in other countries. But here it's sort of like when you hear someone uses a midwife, it doesn't seem like the norm. But there it is. So we have the lowest ratio of midwives and OBGYNs. So it is 12 providers per 1,000 live births.
Wow.
It doesn't seem like a lot, right? All their countries, except for Canada not so good either, Bim, have 2 to 6 times as many. Wow. And midwives are really considered the prime caregiver in those situations. And as you said, it's the only country not to provide access to provider home visits or paid paternal leave after a woman gives birth. And it creates a host of problems, right? There's anxiety, there's depression after birth, there's suicidal thoughts that women deal with postpartum. And if you just dealt with that, you'd probably reduce your healthcare costs. Instead, we're sort of it's counterintuitive what we're doing, right? Like it doesn't make sense because it's costing our society a lot, and women of color obviously are disproportionately affected. We should mention that as well.
Yeah, postpartum depression, you raise,
Yeah.
I mean, it's always minimized.
Always minimized.
People don't recognize it as a mental illness that afflicts so many women, and it has to do with a hormonal imbalance and all of that. What women should be aware of, though, is that they do have legal rights when they're pregnant. I mean, there are laws that should protect them. Obviously, not enough. I mean, if there is an issue that involves a woman, the law is not going to have strong enough teeth. And Janine, I know you looked into this. What is available to women in case they feel that they're being discriminated against because of their pregnancy?
Well, let me tell you about my cousin Gabby first. So my cousin Gabby says that that a male manager told her right before she was going on maternity leave, you don't care about your work. You're going on vacation. Like some men see maternity leave as vacation. And so you know what? That narrative of being less committed, that's illegal. So, and you're not only producing at work, because she was producing at work, she's also producing a whole entire human being. She is sustaining humanity, So it is illegal for any employer with more than 4 employees to fire an employee because she is pregnant, or change the conditions of her work in terms of our conditions, privileges, pay. That means pay. You can't change the pay. You can't change the job assignments. You can't change the training. You can't change promotions. Like, you're supposed to be still on track, even when you're pregnant, for all those things. And even those who are not even current employees, but looking for a job, they have rights too, because it's illegal for an employer to refuse to hire a pregnant woman. So there's that. And working while pregnant, there are laws about this, both state laws and federal laws. The federal law is called the Pregnancy Discrimination Act of 1978. And working while pregnant, New York state law says that pregnant workers also must be able to have accommodations, like work assignments, if available, breaks for water or for rest, leave for any kind of medical needs. So there's that. And when a pregnant woman takes leave, an employer must hold on to their job position for when they come back. They can't not have a space for her because she went off on maternity leave. And also, it's interesting, but applicants who are applying for a job who are pregnant, the employer is not supposed to say stuff about your what's good your child care responsibility is supposed to be. You're not supposed to be steering women to caregiving responsibility. Oh, you may be better off staying at home with your child than coming to work, right? You're not allowed to do that. That's illegal. Or lower paid positions than men with caregiving responsibilities, or treating women of color who have caregiving responsibilities different than any other employees. So there's a whole host of laws that are supposed to protect women who are pregnant.
All right, we just have to make sure that these laws are enforced, right, one way or another. It's no secret that the pandemic wreaked havoc on American families, but particularly women, and we saw the data, and more women than men were forced to leave their jobs in the millions. So Amanda, I know you looked into this. What was the impact of the pandemic on young families?
I think we're still seeing the impact now, even though we're out of the woods a bit, right? What the pandemic did really basically is kind of really put a spotlight on what we already knew, which is women are like a crucial part of a thriving economy, right? Like, you have, I think, a December 2019 report from the Center for American Progress shows 64% of women are the primary earners, even when they're in marriage. They're in when they have a partner. Women are the breadwinners. They're the mothers. They're doing everything. And so, to your point, the pandemic, the losses of women to the workforce were astronomical. 1 million women, I think, is the number that dropped out of the workforce, and for the most part, most of those women have not returned. And that was, of course, because of how difficult it was to try to maintain working remotely, teaching your children remotely, and keep it all together, right? Or in absence of daycare and help with caregiving for your child, whose burden is it? It becomes the mom's burden. So oftentimes, unless your husband, you have a partner or somebody who can help pick up the slack, like family or whatever, the impetus fell to the women to just say, I can't do this anymore. I've got to stay home with my kids. Interestingly enough, more women than men reported hurdles at work that were created by the pandemic. More women complained that they had an inability to give their all. 54% of working women compared to just 37% of working men had a harder time. This one always makes me laugh. They do these surveys about men versus women and who's are we equally involved with our families? 63% of men say they're equal partners. The same group, just 43% of women say, yeah, I think we're equal, right? Like, there's some perception issues there. Other facts: women with young kids, of course, as you mentioned, were most affected. Asian and Black moms faced the steepest employment losses. The impact wasn't just on job losses; it's on mental health, on things like keeping your family together, increased anxiety, worry, health concerns, education. I still worry about my children, having been at remote and whatever, what losses they suffer, and will that take them throughout the rest of their lives. There are some not-for-profit groups that are meant to try to help because it is such an issue. The New York Times wrote this article recently and was like, working moms are drowning. And what I thought was striking about the article is that the reporter was referencing having seen a magazine from 1986 with exactly the same headline: "Working moms are drowning."
Yeah.
This is 1986, and now we're 2023. It's the theme has not gone away, and so I think it's a really important conversation to have. Certainly, the pandemic elevated all of this, but it needs to continue because women need to work, and we just need more help, right? We just need more help.
It's funny, you mentioned the article on working moms. In 1960 something, there was an article on my mom in, I think it was Look or Life magazine. It was a cover story, and it was like, working mom, first time. It's like, and so things have not changed at all.
Right.
By the way, I should point out, Amanda, you wrote an excellent piece, an essay about trying to juggle dealing with the children and the school. This was during the pandemic, and then staying at home as a career woman, and going back and forth and juggling all of that. And I think the one line that stuck out to me was like, it's like getting poked in the eye. Or what did you say?
No,
it was
I just wanted to poke my eyes out. It was I still think it was really bad. It was really something I never ever want to do. I love my children to death, but I never ever want to do that again. I never ever want to do that again.
Yeah.
It was torture.
Yeah.
It's just too hard. There's only so much of me, right? To do my professional obligations, and then the schoolwork, and be patient. I'm not a teacher for a reason. Like, what are we doing here? It was hard. It was hard, and luckily I had support, but even that got played out. It was played out.
Yeah. Right.
Well, it was hard.
Things are hopefully getting better. Unfortunately for so many working women, it's a crapshoot when you get pregnant on the job, because you really don't know what benefits are afforded to you as an employee. Some companies are great and others are not so good. Others don't give you anything, right? So, Vivian, why don't you take this one on? Because we don't want to be Debbie Downers here. Are there good companies out there that women can, hope to be employed by, so that they can enjoy some benefits when they get pregnant?
There are definitely companies out there. They tend to be in the tech industry. But just to give you an example of what is available, Netflix is widely seen as having the best maternity, parental, caregiver leave policy, because they provide unlimited leave that's fully paid for up to 1 year in the child's first year of life.
Wow.
Now, Netflix also has put out, according to an article on thepennyhoarder.com, that the employees only take 4 to 8 months of those available 12 months off. So there's something operating in workers' minds.
A lot of it is self-induced pressure.
Right, self-induced pressure that if I'm not there, I become irrelevant, so I'm not going to take the whole 12 months.
The work ethic.
Right. There are other companies that are considered really good in terms of the amount of paid time off that they give. Adobe is one of them. Google is another. Google actually requires their contractors to mirror their benefits. So if you end up working for a company that has a long-standing Google contract, you can enjoy Google's benefits by being adjacent to Google.
Wow, that's cool.
And then the one that really interested me was Thumbtack, because Thumbtack, this company, gives something known as the caregiver leave benefit, and that is every year. You get 40 hours every year as a Thumbtack employee to do non-medical stuff. You can go to parent-teacher conferences. You can be the parent volunteer on a class trip. You can be paid to look for more permanent caregiver. So, all that time you spend going online, interviewing people on the phone, looking up references, You get paid to do that under this caregiver leave benefit. Now, I just want to put the caveat out there that these benefits could just as easily disappear.
Yeah.
Apparently, before the pandemic, these companies that are listed as some of the best were realizing that their employees were getting to a certain level of age. They were thinking about having families or expanding families, so they decided to beef up their leave policies and benefits to try and hold on to their best and most experienced workers. But, as the way the pension went, a lot of companies have decided not to give that out. So there's, some caution that workers should exercise when they're thinking, oh, I'm going to leave this company to try and get onto another company. There's no guarantee that any of these benefits will last. That said, I remember when I was going on maternity leave for the first time, I asked around to a lot of colleagues, like, what happened when you were pregnant? Have you been told that you have to use up all of your accrued paid time off first? And I was told by different employees, depending on how long they'd been with the company, no, at the very beginning, all that paid time off was untouched. I was able to go on some paid leave. New York State is lucky in that you have a short-term disability payment program that kicks in. It doesn't pay you your full paycheck. You're not completely whole. But by the time my turn came, I had to use up all of my paid time off, which meant when I came back to work, I had no paid time off to be sick, go on vacation.
Viv, that's why I had my babies in January and February. I'm telling you, this is literally like a conversation we had that was like, I'm gonna have kids in the beginning of the year.
I'm gonna conceive right now.
No, but I'm serious because
now.
when you can't lose what you don't have, right? But I'm just saying, like, because of my awareness of the inefficiencies of the policy, there was an actual conversation that was kind of like, well,
be strategic.
Like, let's be strategic, because then I was able to take vacation. My children are January, February. I was able to take vacation in the summer as usual.
You literally planned to have your children in January.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Because I was like, I don't want to give up my vacation
You
time.
are a good mom. I mean, the fact that we have to do this.
No, but I mean, this is how much thought, because I had those same conversations when I was, probably you guys told me, like, oh, I lost all my, Kristen, you had like 3 days. Janine, you had 4 days. Like, what did you do?
Well, yeah, because my first child was born in 2001, and September 11th happened.
Oh.
So I was, again, that feeling of having to go back to work, this pressure.
What month?
And nobody put pressure on me. I was just like, she was born in July and September, right? And so it wasn't the full 12 weeks, but I was just like, oh my gosh, September's, I have her in my arms, I'm watching the news, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to get back to work. And it was this pressure that, like,
self-induced.
Yes, it was kind of self-induced. I got to get back, right? Otherwise you'll be deemed irrelevant. You need to work on, and so it was the biggest story ever. Like, that became my priority. And I was just like, here you go with my baby. And I went to work. Like, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
Right? So, it's...
And you were talking about the good companies. We should mention, I think it was Google who had that big pregnancy discrimination case against it, right? That was very public. And then we didn't really find out how it ended because, of course,
They settled.
Yeah, she settled, and then she couldn't talk. But she was very vocal about it before that. So it's great they have the policy in place, but know that there's going to be some managers who don't follow the policy.
And it's great benefits as long as you're not among the thousands that they were laying off, during these holiday or the holiday months last year.
And it's a great retention tool, as Vivian was saying. Like, if you have a great place to work, and they're giving you benefits and allowing you to live your life and be a mom.
Well, that's the thing.
Right, then you're going to love to work for this company and you want to come back.
And you'll stay,
Right.
you'll stay. Yeah. I was thinking back, I think more you and me, Kristen, when we had our kids, the company we worked for had daycare options for some of the new parents, but it wasn't in our building, so we had lobbied for it, but it never came to pass. But when it came to nursing,
I just didn't. I didn't.
You didn't? Okay, well, I did, and I made a go of it for about 6 months when I was doing the early morning shift. Yeah. And it really was, every morning I'd come in with my little blue nursing box, right, the pump box, and I would have to find an office that was unlocked so I could go in there and lock myself in, because there were no facilities for new moms. And I mean, I don't know what's going on over there, but there was one day when I saw the boss's office was open, and which is unusual. Now, this is like 3:30 in the morning, and I go in there and I set up the pump and the thing at the desk, and I start pumping away with that thing, and all of a sudden I hear the doors being unlocked, right? At 3:30, it was like 4 o'clock in the morning at that point. And I went, no. And in walks the custodian, and I get, ay, Dios mío. And I was like, so, and these are the things that the new moms have to go through. And, hopefully businesses, heed the call that they really do have to respect new moms, because
it's also expensive for employers too. I think we should point that out. So much taxpayer money goes to healthcare. There's got to be a way that the government can figure this out a little bit, because it shouldn't just be on the employer. If you're a small employer and you've got to figure out pregnancy and you've got somebody leaving for a couple months, that's a big hit on a company. So there's got to be some kind of balance that can be
But there have to be accommodations. I mean, you were an anchor in the office, so you had a studio and an office space to go to pump. There are reporters out in the street.
I was pumping in the truck car on a shift.
I had like a whole setup
with the bib on. It was like fall, and there were people walking by, and I was just like, hi.
With that noise in your ear that's going on.
Oh my God. Really? You did that in the truck?
Yeah, I did it once, and I never did it again. Then my babies became formula babies. Oh my goodness.
I just went right to formula, and I think that's probably good for people to know too. My girls are fine.
Yeah,
they're healthy, and
I'm a formula baby.
You get
Fine.
a lot of pushback,
too.
like people wanting you to breastfeed, and I just felt I thought it was going to be too hard with work. I went back after 4 weeks. That would have been a nightmare. But B, I wanted my husband to be an equal part of the process. And if I'm breastfeeding and he can't, this way he could give the bottle to the baby, and he was very involved in raising our kids, which made him more of an equal partner, I thought.
Yeah, me too. I claim that my kids are scientifically engineered by Similac. I was, my children are, but it was the same thing. Like my daughter, because she was a preemie, and then I went to the bottle right away, through the formula right away, and in the middle of the night when she got up at 3 o'clock in the morning, here you go. If this is all you now, husband, like Dad, get in the act. And so I was able to sleep for a little while, so that we traded off.
Yeah.
But there's such guilt, I think.
Oh,
that
there's
is,
a lot
well,
of-
I wouldn't
pressure.
subscribe to it, but like there were people who came into the hospital room like, you're not, like the look they gave me,
I
like
know.
you're not breastfeeding, and I was like, get out of my room.
The most natural thing in the world that doesn't come naturally to every woman.
Yeah.
I think that was.
so
there was
just
like
get
a
rid of that guilt,
disconnect
right?
there.
Like let's just.
But you think about it, if there were policies in place to make sure that young mothers or new mothers had time to spend with their children in nurture mode. Well, let me ask you: would you have decided to nurse if you were guaranteed 3 months or 4 months or whatever?
Probably not, because my biggest thing was that I wanted Joe to be involved in the
Your
process,
husband,
and I
right.
didn't want to resent him if I was the only one who could feed the children. And I had heard so much about baby blues and postpartum and all that, and I really wanted to make sure, because I knew I had to get back to work,
Right.
that I was going to try to negate that as best I could.
I mean, I breastfed both of my girls, one for a year and one for 9 months. But I think you just work. You
work it out.
You work it out,
Yeah.
right? Like I pumped, and he
The
was
first
able
one
to do.
for a year, right?
Yes.
The-
Oh no, this.
No?
I don't think.
I mean, I applaud people who do it.
No.
Like, I think
Maybe
it's such a
maybe
It was a
maybe it's
lot of
like-
work.
Maybe it was
Yeah.
reversed. It might have been to your point about first kids, right? Yeah. No. I think the good rule of thumb is like, if you decide you want to do it, go for it.
Absolutely.
If it doesn't work out, no baby, like to your, nobody ever starved by having Similac, or I did it because it was easy for me. If
Yeah.
it was very difficult, I would be like, get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Have a I just think it's.
Yeah, it just shouldn't be a stress that's
Yeah,
put
it
on.
should-
Like,
it should- yeah, you
whatever
should feel
works
no
for you
guilt.
is
Right.
great, and I applaud
Right.
everybody who breastfeeds, because
Right.
I know
Right.
I have friends who are big proponents of it, and I think it's great.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah,
Just
because
not
the
for
guilt
everybody.
will work on you too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if people make you feel like ashamed or embarrassed
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you're not a breastfeeding mother.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
Oh, and that
that's
happens.
terrible.
Oh, yeah,
I
it
know.
does.
Strange though.
It's
I mean,
very
we're
judgmental.
surrounded by images of cleavage, right?
Yeah.
Like in popular culture.
But don't show breastfeeding mom.
This is not allowed. The most natural thing in the world, and what sets humans apart among mammals is the ability to do this. And I feel like at some point people have to be able to talk about why that disconnect exists. Like, why can we not accept that a woman should be able
I
to
often think
breastfeed her
it's
child?
women judging other women
But
too,
yeah,
right?
I
Don't you
just
feel
said
like-
I did this for a year and not whatever it was both times. When I think about it, I'm almost in shock that I did it because I'm grossed out by it. And it was me doing it. It was me even doing it to my own child.
what do you
Now that I think
attribute?
about it,
What
I don't
is
know,
that?
probably just because of all the stigma
Social,
that
right.
I've been so socially conditioned, like
To hide
like I
it.
said, to just
Right.
be like, I'm very grateful my kids were not sick, all of the
Right.
benefits or whatever. But again, I just did it because it was easy. It was very easy for me. Even when it was hard, it was easy. But like I said, when people ask me, did you breastfeed? I'm like, yeah. because because of all of the social conditioning that's happened.
Yeah.
And talk about social conditioning though. Breasts are exposed sexually.
The guys are all
with
cringing
no
right now.
problem, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to
Yeah.
breastfeeding, everybody's all embarrassed
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
ashamed.
Yeah.
And I think we got a long ways to go in this country.
I mean, there are women
Very-
who will start lactating if they're in proximity of another lactating woman.
Yes,
There
or-
are stories of this, right?
Yeah.
So this idea that women, like subconsciously on a genetic level, will respond to the fact that there is a child in need. I mean, that I don't know of any.
When you
other-
hear a child crying,
Yeah.
and all of a
It
sudden,
doesn't.
ow, ow, ow.
Oh, totally. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, on
Fun.
that note,
Where do we get to childbirth?
Oh my God.
I think we'll leave off. Yeah, wait
that
till
one.
you hear my childbirth story. Anyway, thanks, guys. This was obviously this hit home.
Yeah.
This struck a very personal nerve for all of us. But here's my quote to end this episode, and it comes from Tina Fey, of all people. Brilliant. She said, I think every working mom probably feels the same thing. You go through big chunks of time where you're thinking, this is impossible. Oh, this is impossible. And then you just keep going and keep going and keep going, and you sort of do the impossible. And that's pretty much how we experienced it. So thanks all once again, and thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to The Five of Us. We want to hear from you with any questions, ideas, or suggestions for future discussions. Just write to us at the email you see here, and we will be eager to help. Talk to you next time.